Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October webinar. I know that we are going to have some new folks on board tonight, so for those of you who this is your first time, welcome. And here's how this works. I have a presentation that I'll show you about our topic tonight, which is on the subject of what progressives and Democrats need to do to win in 2018. Very important topic, obviously, as we enter the election cycle. And this information I'm going to give you tonight is taken from my experience working with candidates who've run campaigns, working with grassroots organizations, and what I've learned from cognitive science and framing and political psychology over the last several years. So there's opportunity to comment in the live chat section there. So feel free to do so. And we're going to get started. Oh, also, so all of you know this is being recorded, so please keep it clean, and because this will be on the web in perpetuity. So welcome to everybody, and we'll get started here. So the first thing that I want to address is that there is a bit of a problem in terms of how the standard progressive or Democratic campaign is run. And I think that this runs the gamut from specific political issue groups to grassroots organizations to actual campaigns. And I think one of the biggest takeaways here is that, at least in Wisconsin, we've had elections in 2012 statewide, 2014, and then just recently 2016 with the presidential elections, where we can look at what happened in terms of cognitive framing, messaging, communication strategies. And we can look at those lessons that really haven't been learned in those last three elections. And the first one that I think with, keeping it clean, dirty subjects, good pun. The fundamental thing that has become standard practice in campaigns is the idea that the primary messaging, the primary communications from people are defensive. They're anti-something or someone, specifically in this case anti-Scott Walker or anti-Donald Trump, or anti-Koch brothers, or anti-this, anti-that. You can fill in the blank there. And why is that a problem? It's because, as you see in the second bullet point, there's no positive or progressive ideas in these campaigns to change the frame, as it were. So with these defensive messages, you see, as we'll see in a little bit actually, a repeating of what your opponent is communicating to their allies and their supporters. And if you are just playing defense, if you are just saying, I'm against Scott Walker for X reason, or I'm against Donald Trump for X reason, you can actually reinforce their message, which is exactly what you don't want. Interestingly enough, conventional wisdom in campaigns quite a while ago used to say that the worst thing you can do is use your opponent's language. And here we find progressives and Democrats are doing that all the time. So those first two things are critical, and they are lessons that we've not learned over three election cycles in Wisconsin primarily. And as we've seen Wisconsin go, so has the rest of the nation. So these are not just state relevant lessons. These are have national implications. So the third bullet point there that I want to point out, lessons that we haven't learned, is this model of a top-down campaign. Back in 2012, 2013, as I was talking to Wisconsin Democratic strategists, and we were talking about communication strategy, I was pointing out that there should be, local-oriented communication strategies, things that are relevant in specific regions of the state, because how you communicate your values are the same, but how those apply to, say, Ashland, Wisconsin, is much different than how you communicate those on issues in Milwaukee. And interestingly enough, we've seen a widening of the rural-urban divide instead of closing that gap. So I think part of that comes from this idea that the top of the ticket, whatever level that is, whether it's presidential, U.S. Senate, gubernatorial, whatever that top of the ticket campaign is the one that dictates strategy. And in many cases, as we've seen, those things are not relevant to very large populations of people. So that is another flawed strategy, and it's a lesson that has not been learned over 3 cycles. So the result of all of this is that we've seen kind of standard Democratic candidates running standard Democratic campaigns, and what is really clear based on my travels and my experience is that people, both Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives, they need and they want more. They are looking for something much bigger than that. They're looking for something that is far more inspirational than this kind of standard campaign that gets run. And I have a really striking graphic here that I don't know if many of you have seen, but the result, and while there are a lot of other factors at play, I think you can point to the loss of a dominant Democratic or progressive message or vision or way to communicate values has a big part to play in this. If you look at 2008, I think pay special attention to the north central part of the state and then the counties along the Mississippi River. You look at how those have gotten even more and more Republican and conservative as time goes on. And while you can, talk about a lot of contributing factors, like voter ID, like redistricting, redistricting doesn't have a lot to do with losing individual counties and the trend that we've seen over time. And voter ID also can be a contributing factor, and it's terrible to disenfranchise anyone, but to the extent of the trend that we're seeing, says that there's something bigger at play. So I want to look tonight, so seeing that there is a problem, and we have to acknowledge and be honest that there is a huge problem. And it's interesting how after the recall everybody's talking about message, and then after 2012 everyone was talking message. Yes, good comment. Deserve more as well. As much as people have talked about message, nothing has changed. So I think this is a good arena to talk about what we must do to win in 2018, because it's going to take real reform. And real reform means not only acknowledging the problem, but doing something to really change the strategy and address these outdated ideas of what conventional wisdom is. And what's kind of funny is that if you ever hear George Lakoff talk about how progressives and Democrats believe in the 17th century view of how the mind works, it always gets a good laugh from people because it's true. But it's also funny because we don't think that our perception of thought is based in 17th century philosophy, Descartes, when actually it is. And we know a lot more now than we did even 15 or 20 years ago. So what I've been proposing is that we apply science to our political strategies and dispose of what passes for conventional wisdom. And here are three things that I want to address tonight that pass for conventional wisdom. That's a really good comment. And I have some more examples that you can look at later, and I think they'll fit the gun control. And I have to give kudos. There are some Democratic legislators in Wisconsin now that are starting to address the gun issue as a public health issue, like an epidemic. And I think that's constructive to talk about it in terms of being a public health issue, a public wellness, and that there's an epidemic. So good observation, and yeah, there's more. I have some more like that I think you can relate to later. So the three areas, or the three ideas that pass for conventional wisdom is, the first one is that you can persuade with facts, and you can convince people to either change their vote or change their opinion, or even engage with them in a constructive conversation based on facts on issues. So facts are patently not persuasive or inspiring. Yes, public health issue. So facts are not persuasive or inspiring. I have more on that in a minute. Secondly, this idea that negative attack ads are effective is 100% wrong. They also are not persuasive or inspiring. I can relate a story. This is again, going back just a couple of years ago, sitting in with some very high-level Democratic strategists, and I questioned why everything coming out of state party communications has to be negative. And they said, well, we raise more money when we run negative ads, or when we send out negative emails. Thank you, yes, and negative mailer pieces as well. And the response was, yeah, so we raise more money when we send out positive emails, which I don't know when the last time they sent out a positive email was. No idea. But so the rationalization was, well, we get more money. Good comment. Stories sell, numbers numb. Yes, exactly right. And when I questioned this idea of negative ads, what they said was, well, we have to raise money, so we have to do these negative ads. And my response was, well, just because you raise more money doesn't mean that you are inspiring people. You could be just, squeezing more liquid out of a stone because those few people that are responding with donations, they are your very, very dedicated 10 or 15% of the people that will always give money. And the more scared they get, the more money they give, because they think that's the solution. That doesn't mean that you're being effective at communicating what will motivate or inspire people. They have no comeback for that. It's just, well, we have to do what raises money, and that's negative ads, so we're going to keep doing that. So again, this flawed idea of conventional wisdom. Richard. So in response, yes, mental. There is a mental health aspect in the overall public health. So yes, you could also make that an issue of people's well-being, community well-being, that kind of thing. So the third problem is this whole kind of perpetuating cycle that we're stuck in now, where you see that the candidates who are running, and especially at the top of the ticket, they're just these candidates that toe the line, or they're able to check off all the issue boxes, or they're just the good team players. Those are the candidates that run and represent the party. The problem with that is, as you're going to see in a minute, that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting an authentic candidate. And I'll define authentic in a little bit, but I'm hoping you kind of get the idea that just because somebody is a quote-unquote team player, or they toe the line as a quote-unquote good Dem, or they're able to check off every issue box, they may not be the people that are most inspiring or persuasive to get people to either think about progressive values and progressive ideas, or vote for a progressive or Democrat. So those are the three problems that real reform needs to address. So, and I have to thank Steve Arnold from Fitchburg for emailing me this cartoon. This is great. This is from Dilbert recently. About facts, right? So you have, watch me win this debate on Twitter by providing facts and logic, right? So sending a tweet based on facts and logic, wait for everyone in the world to change your mind, and guess what? It doesn't work, right? I've been trying to find a clip. There's a great clip from the show Parks and Rec, where the Leslie Knope character is talking strategy to offset something. I'm going to try and find it, but she says, I'm armed with facts and science. I have facts and science on my side, and all he's got, her opponent, all he's got is fear. And she says, oh my God, I'm going to lose. So that's great. So there's a couple good comments there, right? Raising money is not the same as raising votes. That's 100% correct, because you can be getting donations, again, from your 10 to 15% of core true believers, and the more you scare them, the more money they're going to send. But that doesn't translate into votes, right? Because we'll see in a little bit why. But fear is not an effective motivational factor to get people to vote. So, good comments. Moving right along. So, here's the thing about facts, and I kind of disagree with George Lakoff when he says facts don't matter, because facts do matter. They're important. But let me just take a quick sip of water here. Yeah, thanks for that observation. They never ask how many people they're turning off with fear. And just a quick, let me switch the camera here so you're not staring at something that's irrelevant to what we're talking about. So to this comment about they never ask how many they are turning off with fear. So here's what's interesting. About 2 months before the election, and I think you can still go on The Guardian and find their, they had this great series, this great short video series before the election. And they went to the inner city of Milwaukee, and they went to other urban areas around the country. And what they were finding out was that people from African American communities, people from Hispanic communities, they were telling The Guardian that they weren't going to vote for Hillary Clinton, and they just weren't excited about her. They weren't inspired by her. These were actually things that these people said. So The Guardian ran a piece like 2 months before the election saying, look, Hillary's got a real problem with communities and people that Barack Obama had huge turnout with, won by a landslide, and she's not going to motivate and inspire these people to vote 2 months before the election. And then what happens in urban areas when the election happened? We saw that numbers were way down. And yes, bingo, thank you. It's a great comment, Steve. The facts presented by the Wisconsin Budget Project will reinforce progressive ideas among true believers. Correct. But they will do nothing to sway the kind of the biconceptual conservatives, who are the ones that we need to start winning statewide elections again. So, but the idea is, for the very first part of her campaign, Hillary Clinton was running a be scared of Donald Trump, right, a be scared of Donald Trump campaign, which turned people off, coming off of hope and change and forward and this positive vision, right? So, yes, back to the thing here. Yeah, so great comments. Spot on, and really important to understand how facts fit this whole strategy. So first of all, facts, as most of you know, they have to fit the context of the frame. Meaning that if facts that you are talking about go against the frame that someone is living their life in, the way that they perceive the world. So in this case, let's say conservative, right? So if you start talking about, as Steve pointed out, facts from the Wisconsin Budget Project about how, under Scott Walker, Wisconsin is dead last in job creation, or whatever the number is, or he's only created so many jobs, or Weedick, is failing to track job creation, and those types of things, right? If that doesn't fit the context of your frame, which for conservatives, job creation is a huge metaphor that basically says that government is immoral, that government only gets in the way of job creation. So by getting government out of people's lives, reducing regulation, yes, that's a spot-on observation, right? And I have some details on that in a little bit, so hold that thought about fear and less votes. So back to the facts. If the facts don't reinforce that idea of small government and getting rid of regulations and taxes increases job creation, those facts will be rejected. They will be ignored. Your brain will not accept them. They will be kicked out. Why? Because that's how you understand the world. You only perceive the world through frames and metaphors and the things that your brain allows you to understand. So, the way to make facts effective is to provide context in your frame. Right? So, instead of talking about job creation, you have to talk about something different. You have to talk about the way systemic economies work. I've used the term profit creator. If you start talking about how people that live in communities and work there and raise families there, that they're profit creators, so that means that they have to be protected and empowered by the government, and that means that corporations and businesses have a responsibility to those people because they are profit creators. That completely changes the frame of economics and will allow facts that support that frame to be accepted. So, and here's some other examples. So, right, gun control was one that was pointed out earlier about facts being rejected to maintain the frame, right? Gun control is one, right? Because if you talk about gun control, then the conservatives will only think about their own personal freedom, and that government's going to come and take away their guns and their freedom, etc. Right? Job creation is one I just talked about. Global warming is a big one, right? If the facts on global warming mean that we need more regulation, conservatives are going to think of the heavy hand of the government, which, again, you see big government there, and they're going to reject those facts because their brain will want to maintain the frame of immoral government, Big Brother, the heavy hand of government, whatever, government red tape, whatever you want to call it, overreaching bureaucracy. So, right, they're all over the place, right? So it's hard to avoid these, but in order for our facts to be effective, we need to start evoking progressive values. And how do we do that? Why is that important? Here's why. Because conservative values are based on self-interest, authoritarianism, and a hierarchy of socioeconomic structure. Right? So that's what the conservative frame is based on. Personal liberty, small government, wealthy people are moral, poor people are immoral, they need discipline to make them moral, etc., etc. That's conservative values. Progressive values are based on empathy and the idea of having a moral responsibility to care for others. So since all politics are moral, right, if we evoke progressive values, that provides us the foundation to accept facts that support the frame and our values. Right? So it's the idea of leading with values, leading with empathy and caring for others in ways that we have facts to support. Right? And most people are capable of empathy. We're hardwired for it. So this is a great opportunity that for the most part is being missed right now because we have somebody who is acting as an extreme, almost living metaphorical example of conservative values, that is Donald Trump, doing things that are, again, almost a caricature of the conservative frame. Self-interest, authoritarianism, socioeconomic hierarchy. I mean, this is this giant caricature, and we have an opportunity to provide people with a different moral vision of politics where you care for others. Politics of caring is something that Lakoff has referenced, the idea of making it about the politics of caring. So this is a great opportunity because people are just looking for something like this. So, and an example, kind of an example of this at work leads into our next item, which is this idea of negative attack ads. So I just want to look at this comment here because it looks like a good one. The problem with I clicked on the wrong thing. Give me a second. There we go. Oh yes, no, perfect. Yes, spot on. Right. So the people that voted for Trump, I would say yes, he is probably incapable of empathy, with the slight exception of those who are his family, like those who are closest to him. But it's kind of authoritarianism, strict father in practice. So yeah, probably not so much empathy. But yeah, people that voted for him are, the vast majority are capable of empathy. The vast majority. Which is why... Thank you for noticing that that's a terrible flyer. That is actually a flyer that went out. And I believe it was DFA. I think it was DFA that sent that mailer out. And it was like this 10 days of early voting, 10 reasons to vote against Scott Walker, right? Number one, jobs failure. I mean, this is, first of all, how many of you can remember the 10 days of early voting? And how many, in the 10 reasons that were, nobody can, right? I mean, this flyer talks about job creation. It talks about job growth. It's got a picture of Scott Walker on there. It's all about Scott Walker. So not only are they trying facts, and this is a case where facts can lead you to unintentionally reinforce your opponent, but look at, in terms of negative, this is a negative attack ad, right? Vote no on 4 more years of Scott Walker, and look at what this does. It helped him. Why did it help him? Because it repeated his message, right? His message, which you're going to see in a minute, is all about job creation. And so it reinforces his frame, because when you evoke one idea of the frame, it activates the entire frame. It relies on facts, which we just talked about, and it's certainly not inspirational, it's not motivational, and yes, it's also polarizing. Right, it feeds into the whole divide and conquer strategy that has been so effective recently. Yeah, and thank you for pointing out that most people show empathy for local people and situations, which is why I've been a big advocate of locally focused, like regionally focused communications campaigns, right, that have a local message that evokes empathy for people in your community. Because once you do that, then you can translate that into bigger, broader campaign type of messages, because it's just like the way we understand are being governed in a nation. We understand it through the metaphor of either a strict father or nurturing parent. It's because it's based on the family metaphor, because that's when we were first governed. So we can translate those local empathy into bigger campaigns, but it takes a cognitive strategy to do that. So yeah, that's something. So a lot of you may have seen. So I have an example of a positive, hopeful vision message. Probably a lot of you saw, if you read my recent blog, that showed this ad. I gotta say, this is a great ad, from cognitive framing, from messaging, from communication strategy. And before you look at it, here's why it's good. It will inspire and motivate people, which is what science tells us. So when you have a values-based message, when you have a message that evokes values, not issues, right? And when it is positive, hopeful vision for the future, those two things combined, right? When you combine those things, it will inspire and motivate people. They are far more likely to act and respond to you. It reinforces the frame you believe in and that you want people to believe in with you. And then it allows you, it actually empowers you to provide ideas and policies that support your frame. So I'm going to queue up this ad now, and give me a second, and it'll show up here. Again, many of you have probably seen it. I want you to look at it, watch it in the context of what we're talking about tonight, and set aside your dislike for Scott Walker and watch the ad on its merits. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Scott Walker. I love Wisconsin. Every day is a chance to make things better for the people of our state. More folks are working than ever before because we're open for business. Our budgets are balanced and we now have surpluses, so we lowered taxes. At the same time, we're investing more into schools than ever before. Test scores and graduation rates are among the best in the nation. More families can afford to send their kids to college because we froze tuition. More people have access to health care here than just about anywhere else in America. I love traveling the state and hearing how the things we're doing are helping. But there's more to be done. investing in training for our workers, helping people create jobs, making our schools even better. At the end of each day, after all the miles and conversations, I can't wait for the alarm to ring to see what opportunities tomorrow will bring.
Are you with me?
Hi, I'm Scott Walker. I love Wisconsin. Every day is a chance to make things better for the people of our state. More folks are...
Okay, how about that? As I said, I mean, it takes a little bit to kind of swallow your dislike for Scott Walker, but when you go back and watch that ad on the merits of what we just talked about, I'm going to pull that slide up again here, and you can see how effective that ad is going to be in terms of a strategy and doing what science says is effective, right? So you have the hopeful vision, positive message, right? And it's definitely values-based, right? Because he's talking about getting government out of the way, right? He's talking about more personal liberty. I'm gonna disagree on the Randy Bryce ad. Randy Bryce is a totally different type of ad, and I've actually done. I think if you go back into my blog archive, I think I did something about it. Bryce's ad is very, very biconceptual. He evokes conservative values and he evokes progressive values. So it's a very, very mixed metaphor kind of ad. And while it was emotionally powerful, Bryce talks about, he like challenges Paul Ryan, kind of does this like one-upsmanship, I'm stronger than you. I can do this better than you. He also talks about how hard he and other people have worked. Other people he knows have worked to get their benefits, to earn. They've earned everything that they've gotten. That's very conservative values. And then he's also done the empathy thing with the whole part with his mom and caring about her, and how we should care for people that struggle like that. The Bryce stuff is very kind of mixed metaphor. So I'm kind of concerned about how that's playing out. But great observations, yes. Walker's saying, I'm here for you as your leader. I'm going to show you the way. I'm going to get government out of your life. You're going to be more free, et cetera, et cetera. Very positive message. And then what he does is, when you perceive the frame, when you perceive those conservative values, right, then he turns around at the end, and then he talks about the issues, right? Investing in education, creating jobs, etc., right? So that you understand that when he talks about those ideas, those policies, he's talking about the conservative view of those, right? So here's the point of that. So it's pointless for Democrats and progressives to just talk about job creation and investing in schools, right? They have to frame it first. If you don't frame it, then Walker gets the default frame because it's dominant and he did it first. So that's the idea with why changing the frame is so important, and why doing it in a positive way is so important. And yeah, the visuals, the outline of the state with the word home on his t-shirt is genius. The visual of him just being very positive. And if you go back and look at the video again, you can find it on YouTube. Look at the video. He's always looking up. Notice that. He's always looking up and he's always pointing up. Very metaphorical. There's a lot of powerful visuals in there. And I'm concerned because this takes it right to the Democrats and says, okay, show me what you got. and right now, all virtually anybody is doing is attacking Scott Walker. And yeah, So, so I want to just finish this webinar. So now we've looked at two aspects that are very important: how facts need to be framed first, how important a positive message is, and I want to look at the last one, because I'm kind of saving the best for last here, because this is the hardest thing right here, is to find authentic progressive candidates. So if you look at what we just talked about, let's say that I'm working for candidate X and they tell me they want a perfectly framed campaign. So we draft all this stuff, and I type it out, and we brainstorm it, and we get it perfected so it's a perfectly framed campaign. If that candidate is not authentic, meaning if that person is not reflective of the values that they are talking about, if it's not really part of their belief system, then all that messaging, all that good framing is useless, because people will inherently dismiss a candidate that is not authentic. And it won't be something that they can consciously communicate or define. It will just be kind of that person just doesn't feel right. And when they go into the voting booth, they won't vote for that person, and again, they won't be able to consciously communicate why. It'll just be a gut feeling. My gut just says that person is not the right one. And so you need candidates that authentically and honestly can execute the two previous strategies, because then they already will be able to connect with people through shared values and beliefs. And what's most important is that people will then see what they value in those authentic candidates, right? So they will have that connection that's authentic. And I would argue that was the attraction of Bernie Sanders to so many millennials. I mean, who would have thought that, a half a century age difference would have, I'll get to that question in 1 second here. A half century in age difference would yield such an attractive candidate to millennials. But I think it was because of the authenticity of the messenger, the authenticity of the candidate. Because at the end of the day, people will vote for morals and beliefs, not on a laundry list of issues. And somebody referenced earlier this idea of bringing, of overcoming the idea of divide and conquer. This is how you do it, is with authentic candidates who people can see their values in. Oh, surprise. So DPW shooting down a Moral Monday talk in a rural area. Wow. Yeah, that would have been good. Can the Dems challenge Walker by asking if a true supporter will cut all the education funds he has? I think you need to go a little further than that. And first of all, you have to frame education in a way that makes people care about not only what's going on in their community, but in places like Milwaukee and other rural areas that have been impacted by by what's happened in education. We could do maybe we should do a whole webinar on that, because it's a really important issue, and it's how you define education. So, and again, I think if you go back in my blog archive, I've done a bunch of stuff on education and what the purpose of education is from the progressive frame, and then you relate that to what's best for the community, what's best for, for everyone in the state, and what does that mean to education funding, or education investment. So, I don't think you can just directly talk about cuts to education funds, questioning that just in and of itself. You have to provide some context. So hopefully that makes sense. So there you go. There's already been a lot of discussion. So let's get to the camera here. And I'm just going to scroll back. I don't think that any question went unanswered here, or comment. The comments about the helmet in the motorcycle video. If you go back, I think he is wearing a helmet. It's just black, so it's kind of hard to see. And the Randy Bryce thing. I think I did do a blog about that, and I think that how effective that message is going to be is up for grabs, because right now they're leaning way towards just attacking Paul Ryan. So, and that's no surprise, because the person who's running Bryce's campaign is a huge national Dem strategist. So, that's a great question about education. I've talked to some education people about this, and I've always thought a great the helmet covers his bald spot. Yes, right. I've always thought a great education ad would be so let's say you live in Wausau. So you find somebody in Wausau who's really well known to be a leader in the community, and or somebody who's really well known, maybe a public figure, maybe somebody who's very, you could say a business leader, or somebody who would agree with the message. So you find that person, and you put them, on the set with one of their former teachers, and the person who's the community leader or whatever would say something like, hi, my name is so-and-so, and you know me as this, but, when I was in Ms. or Mr. so-and-so's 5th grade class, I had no idea what was possible in life, but, my public school and my teacher showed me what's possible in life, and, because of the investment we all made in each other through public education, now I can pay it forward to the next generation, et cetera, et cetera. Something like that gets people thinking more about that education is about the future. It's our investment in each other and the future, and that we have a moral responsibility to do that. So those are the ideas that need to be encompassed in that. So good comment. But something systemic like that, showing that when somebody's in grade school, they have no idea what's possible, but our investment in each other through public education shows that. Right. Or like, I want to thank all of you for investing in your public schools, because now I can pay it forward. Right. Now you're getting the idea. Bingo. So, good stuff. So, really good comments, everybody, and good group. Glad to see some of you first timers. Obviously, there's way more to this. So, my website address, as many of you know, is up at the top there, the www.frameforfuture.com. You can contact me through there as well. So I'm happy to see new faces and see new people on here, and feel free to email me with questions as well. And I will see you in a month enjoy the blogs that are going to be upcoming, and feel free to stay in touch. And thanks for all you do. So, with that, we're going to end, and have a great night.